Welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis.
Hi, everybody. It's Bill Ellis again, your host for What's the Point? We have another amazing guest today, and today we're going to meet someone who began as a science student in Poland, built early side projects in growth and data, weathered trial and error as an indie founder, and eventually co-founded MyArchitectAI, a browser-based tool that helps architects and designers turn ideas into images in seconds. So we're going to explore the story behind that path, what sparked the shift from early ventures to this company, setbacks, doubts along the way, and what drives them to keep building tools that remove barriers for others. And our guest today is Kacper Staniul. Kacper, welcome.
Welcome, Bill. Thanks a lot for having me, and great to be here.
Let me start, let me get right to it, Kacper. When you look back at the journey you've had so far, from early experiments to running MyArchitectAI, what part feels most alive for you right now?
I would say, so my background is in marketing, and I just enjoy testing lots of different channels. Just text testing, experimenting, failing, learning from mistakes, and just improving stuff as I go. And being a founder of a small company, just let you do it as much as you want without having to be responsible for and then having to explain your decisions to anyone. So I'm totally independent, and I can test as much as I want. So this is what I enjoyed most.
That's a great place to be. I admire you, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will not only admire you, but envy you. So I know that they will learn quite a bit from our conversation today. Let's get started early. So you studied material science early in Gdańsk and in Poland, and what drew you to that field originally? And kind of give me an age range of where you were at that point.
Honestly, this was pretty random because at that time in my life, I had no idea what I want to do with my life. And I was around 20 when I started university, and I just like chemistry. That was the only thing that I knew that I like, and that was close to chemistry and seemed kind of interesting, although I had not much idea about what I can even do after graduating. So I just started university because everybody was doing it. So in Poland, all the universities are free. So like in the US, you don't have to get a huge loan, and it's just an easy way.
I think a lot of listeners might be checking flights to Poland right now just based on that one fact about the country. It sounds amazing. So one thing that's very clear to me is that you have tremendous curiosity. And how does that curiosity lead you? How did it lead you to building things, solving problems, like you said, trying to find out an answer, and without fear of failure, by the way?
Honestly, it wasn't like this before, especially during my early days when I was still at the university. I wasn't that curious, I would say. It only kind of evolved when I realized how much there is to learn, mostly thanks to the internet. So during my university days, I had no idea what's out there before discovering all these internet rabbit holes that I dug into, also quite randomly. Just by realizing how many different interesting things you can learn just by spending the time and reading and watching stuff. I just went down this route, and that got me curious.
Well, it sounds like curiosity is maybe at your core. And after university, I think you may have spent some time in the UK.
No, not
No?
really.
Okay. Bit of a research
Why
hiccup,
UK?
but that's fine. But from that time, in those years when you're at university, when you were finding rabbit holes to go down to satisfy your curiosity and learn things, what values or lessons did you kind of learn from then that still guide you today?
First of all, that if you want to keep your motivation high, you gotta do something that you are actually passionate about, because you can't just force it, because you will lose your motivation quickly. Uh, just like with my university, I wasn't really interested in it. I was just doing it because everyone else was doing it, and my parent also pushed me. But then after I discovered internet and marketing and building internet products, I didn't need any external motivation. It was just coming naturally. So as long as, as you're motivated, like intrinsically, then this is all you need to keep pushing forward. And even if you're failing, it's not gonna stop you.
Okay. It's very interesting when I hear people talk about passion driving them. How would you address the purpose that you have and how that's fueled by passion? Or do you feel that passion creates your purpose? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
For me, it's just about the feeling of getting better, with time. And like sometimes, even though I'm not a video gamer, I imagine my journey as a video game where, I'm learning this one skill, and like some kind of a video game skill is getting higher and just keeps growing over time. Then there's a challenge, and this challenge also teaches you something, and your other skill grows. So that's kind of what my mindset is in terms of like, going forward and growing.
I love that analogy, and I'll tell you why, because and it speaks to, I think, why you have been so interested in and successful in marketing. That just paints a beautiful picture. I mean, that gives me a very clear image of how not your mind works, but how you see your development. It's just very interesting. I love it. So before MyArchitectAI, you had some other projects. You did Scrapbook, you did Scrape Labs, and a few others. What did all of those help teach you about entrepreneurship? Because those were early in your entrepreneurial days, were they not?
Yes, that's right. So my first side project was a growth marketing tactics database. So like a big list of ideas that you can implement in your software or e-commerce company. This was a list that I collected during my days working at other companies, agencies, and software companies. And I was just collecting this on the side, and I always knew that I wanted to build my own product. One day I just decided to publish it on the internet and try to sell it. And the feedback was really good from other marketers and founders. And that kind of started everything, because I just, after you earn your first dollar on the internet, like a lot of things change, especially in like when you realize that this is actually possible and it's easier than you thought. But the thing is to just, show what you're building publicly instead of just keeping it to yourself. What I've been doing for a long time with before launching this product.
So that leads me to a couple of thoughts, a couple of questions, Kacper. And so the first is, you said your first side project. Now, if that's a side project, what was your main focus at that time? What were you doing?
Yeah, so I was still working at a marketing agency. This was just what I was working on during the evenings, and yeah, before I published it, I was still working full time.
And that leads me right into the second question I had, which is, and I plan on getting into this a little bit later, but now is the opportune time for this. You said once you we're comfortable. You put it on the internet, and once you get the first sale, then things are, then things take off. 2 points I think that I'd like you to elaborate on for the listeners. One is working full time while you're doing what you can to create your own entrepreneurial effort. And secondly, talk to us about what it took to just have the courage to hit publish. Because I mean, a lot of people I find that a lot of people I speak to are afraid to do that, or just don't think it'll work, or they hit publish too soon. Talk to us about that, would you please?
Actually, publishing too soon doesn't happen very often. So I really wish people, show their work before it is actually ready. And this is actually a good approach to just, I don't remember who exactly said it, but he said that if you're not ashamed of how your product looks when you launch it, first you launch too late, or something like that.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and when I was working on it, I just followed different solopreneurs who are also building their project. Some of them were like working on 5 or 10 different projects at the same time. And I just kind of learned things from them, and also to just launch it before you are actually fully ready. I just followed their advice and published it. But I always recommend people to just work on something on the side, launch it, see what the feedback is, try to grow it as much as possible. Don't quit your job unless you have a lot of runway. And only after your side project, makes some relatively good money, more or less what you're making at your full-time job, then you can think about quitting and just replace your full-time salary with the side project revenue.
Great advice. I had a guest, one of my very early guests, talked about, she put it this way, she put ready, fire, aim. And a lot of people question that, but what she meant is, I think what you're saying, which is, get ready. When you're as ready as you think you can be, fire, put it out there, and then aim is refine it. Learn as it goes out and refine it, because I'm not aware of anything that's gone out 100% perfect the first time. And I loved what you said you learned from, I forget where you said you learned it from, but if you aren't ashamed of the first thing you published, you published too late. What a great phrase. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. You said you followed some solopreneurs. Were you doing that via the internet, or were they some people that you were in your circle, or how did you find solo entrepreneurs to follow and learn from?
Yes, so mostly there is a site called indiehackers.com, and this is just made for solopreneurs working on tech projects, mostly developers, but also other people from other backgrounds who just share their experiences, share what's working, what's not working, ask for advice and stuff. I haven't been on the site for a while now, but in my early days, I was there quite often, and it was helpful. But then still, if you consume too much content and get this idea that you are still in the learning phase, you will never launch anything. So just focus on actually producing rather than consuming, because consuming too much can lead you nowhere in the long run.
That also, hey listeners, I hope you're making notes and or knowing that you need to come back to this, because this is some really great information that Kacper's sharing with us. It's almost to the point of the phrase I've heard often is analysis paralysis, where we spend so much time trying to figure something out, we don't get anything done. And a lot of people, that's their tendency, their core tendency. An entrepreneur, I believe, is more of the, okay, I've got enough, let's go and learn as we go. Is that a fair statement for?
Yeah.
And
100%.
you mentioned just to get the site correct, you said indiehackers.com. Wow, interesting. That's one I will have to check out. The early lessons that you've gotten from there, I think you've shared quite a bit of them, but are there other lessons that you took in and built upon prior to getting into MyArchitectAI?
Yeah, I would say the biggest one is just to launch early and get feedback and not get stuck too much in the learning phase. Like this is what I regret doing the most. I just wasted too much time in thinking that I just need to learn this before I can learn something that I'm not ready yet. But in reality, you will learn the fastest just by getting real feedback from users who are using your product, rather than trying to learn some skills to perfection and fixing your problems and issues with the product. That in real time will be the best teacher.
Well, I would offer a perspective that you, quote unquote, waiting too long was a lesson in and of itself. And by doing that, you learned that not waiting is the answer. Whereas if you would have just started off by firing out, there's a chance, not you personally, but there's a chance people might get discouraged if they launch too early, expecting bigger things and then quitting. So maybe there was a lesson there. And either way, the net takeaway of don't wait, start, refine, learn is a great lesson. Well, let's move on to what you're doing now. The My Architect AI. I'm fascinated that you're in that field because, to begin with, you're not an architect. Following that up, I don't believe you're an AI expert. So you combine those two into a company that is turning out to be very successful. How did all of that come about? How did you see that as an opportunity?
Yeah, so while working on my previous project, which was a web scraping agency, at some point, kind of 2 years in, I got bored because I just needed some new challenge, and I was looking for new project ideas. And I was considering either starting something from scratch or finding an existing product that's already on the market and just acquiring it. And quite randomly on Reddit, I came across this project, MyArchitectAI, which the owner was a developer who I was able to grow it to a couple of, just a handful of customers, but didn't really know what to do with it in terms of marketing, how to take it to another level. And I reached out to him and asked if he would be interested in selling it. And turned out that he was. We agreed to make a deal. And that's how I started working on it. And yeah, like you said, I'm neither an architect or an AI developer. I really wish I was, especially an AI developer, because it's also a super interesting niche. But again, I could, spend a lot of time and try to learn it. But this time I just figured out I will try to find someone who can do it, who's really good at it, and just partner up. And that's how I found my co-founder. And yeah, that's how it started.
So rather than people might have the perception that you thought, oh, I'll get into architecture and AI happens to be going on, you had more of an entrepreneur, and correct me if my assessment isn't spot on, but you had the perspective of an entrepreneur looking for an opportunity, and you had a framework for what that opportunity would be, and it would be something that was started but needed a boost, needed help. Is that fair? So you weren't necessarily looking to in the architecture field, you were looking for an opportunity, and this just happened to be what you found when you were looking, yes?
Yes. I didn't have any kind of strict criteria, but I was just looking for something that I would be really interested in learning about, ideally some new niche, rather than working in, let's say, marketing that I've spent a lot of time in already. And that's also has a big potential for growth. And as AI was and is still exploding, that really fitted the bill perfectly. And also, as the product already had some early customers, that was enough of a validation for this idea. So I wasn't starting from scratch, which is always the most difficult. But there was some early validation, and the product, of course, needed a lot of work in terms of improving the results. But there were some initial customers that were already able to provide us with the feedback on what to work on first.
So you basically had a pre-existing focus group that you could go to and say, what's working, what's not working, how can we enhance this?
Yeah, that's exactly right, and this was incredibly helpful because especially when I was entering this niche, starting from zero in terms of architecture. This kind of feedback helped us prioritize the features that are actually the most important to practitioners rather than for tech people who don't truly understand it well yet.
That too is a great lesson, Casper. And the lesson that I'm hearing you say is know what your customers need and then find out how you can meet that need, as opposed to, I've got a solution, let me force it on you whether you need it or not. That's a whole different approach.
Yeah, and that's a very common issue that first-time founders make.
That's great. I'm just thinking that you talked about how AI is developing and how great it would be to be an AI developer, and I can just see based on your earlier conversation that there are so many different rabbit holes that you could just go down and never get out of. Trying to learn AI, learn about AI, find out its positive, its negatives. So I think that also is, there's so many lessons that you're giving us. And to me, that lesson is know your core strength and know what you can do with that and not get pulled into a rabbit hole, not get pulled into a side issue. How much do you recognize that, and how much effort does it take for you to be disciplined to not go down the same rabbit holes you used to go down more frequently at university?
Yeah, it is a real problem, especially in the space where there's so many opportunities for new products. Like I could just be launching 10 different things every month, and just if I wasn't working on MyArchitectAI and I didn't have any business right now, I would probably be just testing different things at once, saying what sticks and then doubling down on it. But even at MyArchitectAI, we've got so many different feature ideas that could be built with all the new AI technology that's coming up every week, every month. I know me and my co-founder are always sharing all these new developments. She's reading the research papers and telling me, okay, maybe we could build this, maybe that. But we just need to really prioritize hard and listen to what users are saying and building these features first, rather than following all these, all the shiny new things that are popping up everywhere.
Again, great discipline, and it's great to realize that you found a partner that brings to the company, to the table, to the product what you don't have, as opposed to going out and trying to learn it. That's a great lesson. We can't know everything, so finding someone that can help us in bringing what we don't have to the table is a very good thing. Your curiosity and your interest are very evident. Have you all thought yet or about how the basic premise of MyArchitectAI might be applicable to another discipline, another category, another area? And I don't know, just off the top of my head, My Lawyer AI or something like that. Do you see how you can take the basic structure and adapt it elsewhere? And if so, is that something you have to force yourself not to go down to stay focused on where you are?
So we are 100% focused on one need of our users, which is turning early designs into photorealistic images quickly and easily. And yes, there have been some other use cases that we were also exploring, like, for example, virtual staging. And this is also a big opportunity using the AI technology, but it's targeting a different target group, and we could probably just build a whole separate product and another large business for this. But unfortunately, our time is limited, and we won't be able to do it at this point. But yeah, I mean, it's a good problem to have, when you have too many ideas. So yeah, I can't complain about it.
Yeah, especially viable ideas. And you're at the point that you've learned so much and learned what not to do in so many different cases. I suspect that what you guys are kind of putting off on the side are pretty viable ideas. So I would assume you'd get to them sooner rather than later. Let me ask you another, just kind of a basic business question. You're based in Poland, but you based your company in Estonia. Help me understand what Estonia brings to the party, why you based your company there.
Yeah, so Estonia has a very founder-friendly ecosystem in terms of making it easy to establish and run the company. Plus, there's multiple European Union programs and funds that help you grow the company. And everything can be also done online. So I haven't even been to Estonia yet. I was just able to, get the e-residency and establish the company just by going to the Estonian embassy in Poland and do it from here. So it's just everything worked as it should in 2025 compared to other countries that often make it quite hard to get started.
It's terrific to find a place that helps people get started by knocking down some of the roadblocks. And Estonia, my brief understanding of Estonia is that they are pretty much 100% digitally based, and pretty much everything in Estonia is via digital access. But that's another topic we'll get to maybe at another point. But it does bring up a great area of interest, and that is, you said that one of the key advantages of Estonia is they make it more direct, more simplified, with fewer issues. But what I want to talk to you about, Kacper, are some of the issues that you've gone through, some of the rough patches, not only what they are, but what they are and what have been the toughest moments for you, and how do you deal with them?
You mean in terms of growing the company, or?
In terms of entrepreneurialism as a whole, basically your journey to this point, from university curiosity to partnering and making this MyArchitectAI into a tremendously viable product, it's not all easy street. So what kind of things did you learn? What kind of lessons have you learned through adversity?
Mhm. Yeah. I would say that I had my biggest problem. Not just external factors, but me, like I said, just holding off with stuff for too long.
Hmm.
I just realized that if I just started everything sooner, I would already be further in my development and my current growth. So yeah, I'm probably repeating myself what I said before. Just that I wish I just started everything sooner before I was ready.
Well, with that as a framework, were there times when, say, you were still working full time in your marketing gig, were there times that you were working on your side things and maybe you were taking so long to develop them? Did it ever occur to you that, boy, this just isn't going to work? I've got so much. And did you ever think about throwing in the towel and quitting on that? Or if those thoughts came, how did you work through them?
So I think the first side project just taught me how to move it, because like I mentioned, I was working full time and then starting to collect all these tactic ideas that and turned into a product. I've been doing this and just learning how to build internet products from other people for months and months before launching. Based on this experience, I made a mistake, and my second product, which was the web scraping agency, I also went into that niche without being able to scrape the data myself or knowing any kind of details about it. I just knew the benefits of it. How I started, I just built a website. It took me a couple of hours, then started running Google Ads. And I had my first customer the next day, literally. So yeah, the whole setup thing took me maybe a weekend compared to months to start the first product. So that's the biggest thing, like in terms of how my approach improved from project to project.
Okay. It strikes me, Kacper, that you have a very keen ability to look at problems or opportunities and find a solution. Is that fair? Is that kind of like one of your magic traits?
Yeah, maybe I wouldn't call it a magic trait, but I have a pretty good hit rate so far. But also, like I'm not, taking any big bets, and I'm not trying to build a huge company. And even with my current company, MyArchitectAI, I don't want to, grow it to 100 employees and a big organization. I just want to keep it small and make the operations efficient with just a couple of people, thus founders, couple of freelancers. Because right now, if you know how to make the processes efficient, you can do a lot with a very small team. And so that's always been my goal, to just work in a small team and integrate as much as possible, rather than trying to build a huge business, because that's just not what I enjoy. And also, when I was still working full time, I felt best when I was working with teams of like up to 20 people. And when the company started growing over that, I just usually quit and started looking for another job, because that was just wasn't for me.
That also is very important in my experience, and that is finding a place to work and to try to achieve our goals and what we want in life in a place that we're comfortable. I know that early in my professional life, I stayed someplace much longer than I could have or should have. And that's part of the reason I do this show, is because I want people to learn from guests like yourself, things just like that. If you're not in a place that's right for you, find a place that's right for you. And I don't mean quit your job and walk out the door, but find out what it is that is going to be right for you, and seek that out. Which brings me to my next question, Kacper, and that is, not only do you have seemingly a pretty good sense of identifying challenges that can be overcome, do you have any criteria that you kind of either written down or just inherent that you use to help define that, or you pretty much go by feel?
You mean in terms of starting new ventures?
Yeah, in terms of evaluating ventures, in terms of saying that's one I want to do, or in the case of when you discovered the opportunity with MyArchitectAI, well, the parameters that you must have had there, because you weren't looking for architecture, you weren't necessarily looking for AI, but what are the parameters, and are they kind of built into your personal value system? How do you start to put parameters around what might work for you?
Yeah, there's no trick criteria here, but yeah, the how curious I am about the stage, the audience, what's the potential to grow it. Oh, and of course, as I'm a marketer from my background, I need to know if I would be able to grow it myself without getting any outside help. So depending on the product, the customer acquisition channels vary. So if I know the specific channel to grow this product, then it's a good fit. So for example, if let's say if there was some product that's an enterprise tool, and usually enterprise tools get most of their customers through sales, and I don't know much about sales and don't want really to learn about it, then I know that I don't want to build a enterprise tool. But in our case, there are tons of other acquisition channels that I know how to execute, and I enjoy working with them. So this was also a important aspect for me when picking this niche and this product.
Great criteria. Thanks for sharing them. It strikes me also that you live on a base of certainty. It strikes me that you don't have a lot of uncertainty in life. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but what helps you stay grounded? What helps you stay on the side of certainty versus doubt and uncertainty and woe is me?
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, I really don't like risk, so that's why I take my time before picking up a project, and don't do stuff that I'm not really sure about that will work out. I wouldn't say it's like a typical entrepreneur values, because our entrepreneurs are usually risk takers. So even though I'm, starting my own projects, I don't really identify myself as an entrepreneur because I just don't like risk. Yeah, I just prefer to take my time, and before I was working more seriously on this and the previous project, I had a long list of potential new project ideas, which was probably like over 50 different ideas, which was a sheet with the name, description of the project, and there were like 5 columns. I have 4 criteria, such as how easy it is to launch it, how big the opportunity is, and if I know how to grow it. So the criteria that I mentioned to you before, and then there was like a scoring, and that was what I used to prioritize what I'm gonna work next. So this was all to just minimize the risk.
I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't believe I have an entrepreneurial bone in my body. So whatever I'm saying is from the perspective of someone that is not doesn't have the same characteristics and traits that you do or others. But I've heard that it's a misconception that people have that every entrepreneur is just a big time risk taker, and the bigger the risk, the more quickly they are to jump into it. But the reality is that while they recognize risk, they look to manage it and or find risk that has a reasonable payoff, as opposed to just going out there willy-nilly, if you will. Does that kind of tie into what you're saying?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, so I guess if there is probably like some scale of, high and low risk, and just different types of people, even if they're entrepreneurs, are somewhere between on the low risk, long risk niche.
Well, and that seems to have worked very well for you. That brings up another point, that it's as important as anything in my experience that we start to learn ourselves what motivates us, what are we good at, and what is our behavior. And like you said, you're somewhat risk averse. That's a good thing to know. Building that into, I'm going to call it the matrix that you did or continue to have for entrepreneurial ideas. You have columns that very legitimately speak to your needs and your expectations and your limits. So as far as assessing risk, there's the financial risk, but there's also the how much risk am I willing to take? That having that matrix to me is just a brilliant idea.
Yes, definitely. Like, of course, you have to know yourself and what you're comfortable with. Uh, yeah, both in terms of the potential for success of a new project and also what kind of financial risk are you willing to take, both in terms of the startup cost and also how much runway you have. If, for example, you decide to leave your company and go away, which I would never do because I'm so risk averse, but I know people do it if they have enough runway for, let's say, a year or two, and they are very confident your project will work. And so, yeah, it's like you said about knowing yourself and knowing what you're comfortable with, and that's the thing.
And having a good idea, I suspect, as to uh, how much the product, how much value the product or the idea or the service that you have really has in the minds of potential customers, as opposed to in the mind of the person having the idea. I think you probably touched on this pretty well so far, Casper, but beyond just the product, we're talking about knowing yourself. What keeps you going? What keeps you wanting to build and to make things better?
That would be also what I said earlier about treating this all like a video game and just building different blocks, or kind of if your company is like if you're playing a strategy game and you're building out a city, then every day you're building a new building in your city and it gets bigger and stronger. It translates into more revenue, better feedback from your product, especially the good feedback from your users, customers. This is super motivating if you know that you're putting in the work and it is actually seen by them as your product is improving. So this is really motivating. And that's what keeps me going.
Excellent. Just a couple more things to touch base with you on, Casper, and I appreciate your time. I'm going to combine, I've got a few things written down, but I'm going to combine it into one because I think they're so related. You know, your story in general, not just on this episode, but your story in general. What kind of impact do you hope it has on people thinking of starting something? And then kind of a corollary to that, what key piece of advice or pieces of advice do you give to people looking to start? And again, I think you've touched on a lot of them, but I just want to make sure that you have the opportunity and the platform to share what you've learned, much like you learned from those solopreneurs on the indiehack.com.
I would say just if you have some idea that you always wanted to do and you still have a full-time job, just start right now. Don't wait and to gather enough money so you can leave your job and start later. Just start working during the evenings. Share your stuff in communities where the target audience hangs out. Get their feedback if this solution is even needed. Don't start with suggesting your solution and asking if would you buy it, because depending, of course, on the community, people might say that yes, I would buy it, but they just don't want to hurt your feelings. So ideally, just unless you go on Reddit where people are honest and they're definitely not gonna be as friendly, try to just figure out what their needs are and then try to figure out if the solution we're thinking of actually makes sense. And start as soon as possible building a simple solution. Launch it, get feedback, iterate on that. Yeah, just don't wait. Start as soon as possible because it will never be the right moment. So just do it ASAP.
Terrific advice. Final question. And Casper, we talked a little bit about your early life and the path that got you here, some of the challenges, what inspires you, rabbit holes you've gone down, rabbit holes you've avoided. But the final question for every guest I have is very simply, and answer this in whichever context you so choose. But Kacper, what's the point?
To me, it's just the feeling of getting better and smarter. This is what drives me, just to do it for yourself, not for anyone else, because someone tells you. Just do what drives you and keep getting better and providing value to others.
Well, Kacper Staniul, I thank you for your time. I think you have added tremendous value to everyone listening today and in the future, and I thank you for that. I wish you continued success. I hope you continue to avoid unnecessary rabbit holes, and I hope we can continue our relationship. Thank you so much for your time and for your wisdom.
Thanks a lot, Bill. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. And if you like what you've heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise there is value to be gained in every one. Taking a second to rate, review, and share the show helps make us more discoverable and enables others to find out what's the point. If you'd like to learn more about Bill Ellis and his services, please visit his website, billellis.com. See you next time.